Chapter 16. I did it Monday morning in my locker at school. I turned into a lizard, a green anole, to be exact. It's a member of the iguana family, like you care. I waited till the bell rang for the first period, which was my English class. When everyone else was out in the hallway, I just climbed into my locker. I tried to act cool about it, just in case anyone was watching. The locker was about 2 inches shorter than me, so I had to crouch, and it was so tight I couldn't move. The only light was from the three small ventilation slits. I could hear my heart pounding in the cramped dark space. I was afraid. It was one thing to turn into a dog. I mean, it's weird, it's strange, but it's also kind of cool. Dogs are cool animals, but lizards? I should have practiced, I muttered under my breath. I really should have practiced, like Cassie said. I started to focus for the morphing. I remember the way I caught the lizard the night before last. We spotted it with a flashlight, and Cassie had put a bucket over it so it couldn't get away. It had been fairly creepy, just touching it to acquire its DNA pattern. Now I was going to become it. Now I was going to become it. The first thing I noticed was that I suddenly had more room inside the locker. I didn't have time to crouch, and my shoulders weren't scrunched up anymore. I touched my face with my hand. My skin was looser than it should have been, and pebbly to the touch. I ran my hand over my head. My hair was almost all gone. Things began to happen very fast. The locker grew and grew around me. It was as big as a barn, big as a stadium. It was like falling off a skyscraper and taking forever to hit the ground. I was standing on something sticky, as large as a boulder. How had a boulder gotten inside the locker? But then I realized it was a wad of gum. An old chewed up wad of gum stuck to the bottom of the locker. Gigantic drapes as big as sails of a ship were falling all around me. They were clothes. They were my clothes. In the dim light, I could see two monstrous misshaped things on either side of me. I could just make out the Nike swoosh and realize they were my shoes. They were the size of houses. And then the lizard's brain kicked in. Fear, trap, run, 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 run. I shot left, a wall. I scampered up, feeling my feet stick to it. Trapped. I jumped back another hard surface. Trapped. Run, run, run. I fought to get control, but the lizard brain was panicked. It didn't know where it was. It wanted out. Out. Go toward the light, I ordered my new body. The ventilation slits. That's the way out. But the body was too afraid of the light. It was terrified. I was still bouncing off the walls. I could not overcome the panic instincts of the lizard body. Go to the light, I screamed in my head, and suddenly I was there. I poked my head out and my body slithered after me. My tongue flicked out and I got a weird kind of input from it. Like smell, only not quite. It kept flicking. I could see it shoot out of my mouth and lick the air. In the bright light I realized how bad the lizard eyes were. I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. Everything was shattered and twisted around. Down was up was down. Colors weren't even close to right. I tried to think. Come on, Jake. You have eyes on the side of your head now. They don't focus together. They see different things. Deal with it. I tried to make sense of the pictures, using the knowledge, but they were still a mess. It seemed to take me forever to figure it out. One eye was looking down the hall to the left. The other was looking down the hall to the right. I was upside down, gripping the side of the locker, which was like a long gray field that wouldn't end. And all the time the green anole brain was fighting me. Now that it was out of the dark locker, it desperately wanted to go back in. Chapman's office, I remembered myself. But where was it? Left, that way. Suddenly, I was off running straight down the hall. Zoom, then on level floor. Zoom, around a scrap of paper twice as big as I was. The ground flew past me. It was like being strapped onto a crazy, out-of-control missile. Then my lizard brain sensed the spider. It was a strange thing, like I wasn't sure if I saw the spider, or heard it, or smelled it, or even tasted it with my flicking lizard tongue, or just suddenly knew it was there. I took off after it, racing a million miles an hour before I could even think about stopping. My legs were blurred, they moved so fast. It probably wasn't a huge spider, not if you're a great human being. But to my lizard eyes, it looked as big as a small child. It was huge. I could see the compound eyes. I could see the individual joints in its 8 legs. I could see the clicking. I could see the clicking, awful mandibles. The spider ran. I ran after it. I was faster. No, I screamed inside my head. But too late. My head jerked forward, Fast as a striking snake, my jaw snapped, and suddenly the spider was in my mouth. I could feel it fighting. I could feel the spider's legs squirming and fighting to get out of my mouth. I tried to spit it out, but I couldn't. The lizard hunger for the spider was too great. I swallowed the spider. It was like swallowing a whole canned ham. A canned ham that was fighting all the way down. No, 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 my brain cried in horror and disgust. But at the same time, the lizard brain was pleased. I could feel it becoming slightly calmer. That does it, I told myself. I'm out of this morph. I wanted out of that horrible little body. I didn't care who saw me. I was going to morph back to human shape. Marco was right. It was insane to get involved in this. Insane. I heard the ground shake. It was a noise like a giant stomping across the land. It was a giant. There was a huge shadow in the sky. It was like someone trying to crush me by dropping an entire building on my head. The shoe came down. I scampered left. Another shoe. My tail. The shoe was on my tail. I was trapped. Chapter 17. In panic, I tried to run, but my tail was caught. Suddenly, I was free. How had that happened? I realized what happened. My tail had snapped off. Looking back, I saw it, still trapped by the giant shoe. It squirmed as if it were still alive. It wiggled like a worm on a hook. The shoe lifted and flew through the air again. I shot up the side of the wall and froze in place. The giant had not seen me. It had tried to stomp on me. It was just an accident. And now my tail, no, the lizard tail, was gone. The giant walked on, shaking the ground as it went. I focused one lizard eye on the figure. It was like trying to make sense out of one of those carnival fun mirrors. But even so, I was pretty sure it was Chapman. I watched him head down the hall, and with all my power, I ordered my lizard body to follow him. I tried not to think about the spider in my stomach or the fact that it was still not completely dead. I tried not to think about the fact that part of my body was back on the floor, jerking like it was still alive. I just raced along after Chapman, because Chapman might reveal something that would help Tom. I planned to follow Chapman to his office. I'd hid, I'd I'd hide under his desk and listen to him make phone calls. I figured sooner or later he might let something slip about the location of the Yerk pool. Cassie and I had talked about it. She said it would take days of hiding in Chapman's office before we learned anything. Besides, we could only stay in a morph for 2 hours. And meanwhile, I would be skipping class. Sooner or later, I'd get in trouble over that. And the really funny thing is, when they catch you skipping class, you get sent to the assistant principal, Mr. Chapman. I could just imagine that scene. Sorry I skipped class, Mr. Chapman, but I've been in this lizard body watching you because I know you're a controller and part of a giant alien conspiracy to take over the earth. I would have laughed, only lizards excuse me. I would have laughed, only lizards can't laugh. So I just followed Chapman as he marched down the hall. Suddenly he stopped. Were we at his office? I looked around as well as I could, but it didn't look like his office. The spider gave a kick in my stomach. He opened the door. It swung right over me with a big rush of air. It went just above my head as I hugged the floor. I concentrated on making sense of the sights. Wait a minute, this was a janitor's closet. A mess of mops, buckets, and cleaning solution. What was Chapman doing? He went inside. I followed, careful to stay away from high leather walls that were his shoes. I heard a loud click. He had locked the door behind him. It was a long way up from the floor, but I could more or less see him doing things to the sink faucet. I thought he grabbed one of the hooks they used to hang up the dirty mop heads. I was pretty sure he twisted it because I could hear a squeaking sound. And to my total and complete amazement, the wall opened. There was a doorway where the wall had been. Strange smells and strange sounds wafted up from the inside of the doorway. Chapman stepped through. There were stairs just inside heading down into a purple lit pit. From far away, as if it came from 100 miles down, I heard a faint sound. It was a scream of fear and despair, a human voice crying out in the darkness of that terrible place. No, the voice moaned. No! I knew what the scream meant. I knew it was happening. Somewhere down there, a human being was feeling the yerk slug slither inside its brain. Somewhere down there, a human being was being turned into a mindless slave of the yerks. Chapman headed down the stairs. The door closed behind him. I had found the yerk pool. It was right under our school. Chapter 18. Screams, I said. Human screams. They sounded far off, but that's what they were. My friends looked at me, all but Marco, who looked away. It was the same afternoon, right after school. We'd gone to the mall. We figured it was the best way not to look suspicious. No one thinks there's anything weird about kids hanging out together at the mall. We were at a table in the food court sharing some nachos. Ever since eating the spider, I had a desire to consume lots of junk food to help me forget about it. You were a lizard at the time, Marco pointed out. Who knows what you heard? I know, I said. I can't stand the thought of what's happening to the people down there, Cassie said. She shuddered. It's sickening. We have to do something, Rachel said. Yeah, let's rush down there, Marco said. Then it can be us screaming. I realized I had lost my appetite for nachos. Marco, you can't just ignore what's going on, Rachel said. Sure I can, he said. All I have to do is remind myself that, hey, guess what? I don't want to die. That's it then, Rachel demanded, outraged. Just whatever is best for Marco? I don't think Marco is being selfish, Cassie said. Just the opposite. He's thinking about his father and about what would happen if he's not the only one who's got people to worry about, Rachel said. I have a family, we all do. Not me, Tobias said softly. He smiled his sad, crooked smile. It's true. No one gives a rat's rear about me. I do, Rachel said. I was surprised to hear her say that. Rachel isn't exactly sentimental. Look, I said, I'm not asking anyone else to go with me, but I don't have a choice. I heard the scream today, and I know Tom is going down there tonight. He's my brother. I have to try and save him. I held out my hand, helpless. I have to do it for Tom. I'll go with you, Tobias said, for the Andalite. There's no one else who can do anything to stop the Yerks, Rachel said. I'm scared to death just thinking about it. But I'm there. Marco looked sick. He gave me a dirty look. He shook his head. This is so bad. If it wasn't for Tom, I'd walk away. Look, Marco, you don't have to, I started to say. Oh, shut up, he snapped. You're my best friend, you jerk. Like I'm gonna let you go face all of this alone? I'm in. To rescue Tom, that's it. Then I'm done. Only Cassie remained silent. She was looking dreamily off over the heads of the mall crowd. You know, back in the old days, I mean the real old days, the Africans, early Europeans, and Native Americans, they all believed animals had spirits, and they would call on those spirits to protect them from evil. They would ask the spirit of the fox for his cunning. They would ask the spirit of the eagle for his sight. They would ask the lion for his strength. I guess what we're doing is sort of basic. Even though it was Andalite technology that made it possible, we're still just scared little humans trying to borrow the mind of a fox and eyes of an eagle or hawk, she added, smiling at Tobias, and the strength of a lion, just like thousands of years ago. We're calling on animals to help protect us from the evil. Will their power be enough, I wondered? I don't know, Cassie admitted sullenly. It's like all the basic forces of planet Earth are being brought into battle. Marco rolled his eyes. Nice story, Cassie, but we're five normal kids up against the Yerks. If it was a football game, who would you bet on? We're toast. Don't be so sure, Cassie said. We're fighting for Mother Earth. She has some tricks up her sleeves. Good grief, Marco said. Let's all buy Birkenstocks and go hug some trees. We all laughed, including Cassie. Cassie is right about one thing, Rachel said seriously. The only thing we have going for us is the animal morphing thing. And so far, the only morph we acquired are a cat, a bird, a dog, horse, and a lizard. I think we need a little more firepower. We should head for the gardens. We need to acquire more DNA from some animals that are not going to be easy to acquire. I nodded. Yeah, I don't think that hawk, horse, and lizard team is going to impress the Yerks. Rachel's right. I think we have to head to the gardens. We need to get some help from Mother Earth's toughest children. I looked to Cassie. Can you get us in? I can get in for free, she said. You guys will have to pay, but I can use my mom's employee discount, so it'll be cheaper. Oh, I'm sure we can talk them into letting us in for nothing, Marco said. Just tell them we're Animorphs. Tell them we're what? Rachel asked. Idiot teenagers with a death wish, Marco said. Animorphs. I tried the word out. It sounded okay. Chapter 19. We left straight to the mall, hopping a bus out to the gardens, which is clear across the city. On the way, I tried to catch up on my homework. I had missed a lot of class that day, so I borrowed class notes from my friends. Rachel kept perfect notes. Tobias had terrible notes, with all kinds of little drawings in the margins. It took a while before I could figure out what they were. They were buildings and people and cars, the way they looked from high up in the sky. I don't really need to go in, Tobias said, as we pulled our limited cash to buy tickets. I'm happy with just my Hawkmorph. I don't want to be anything else. I think that's a mistake, Rachel said. Our one real weapon is the power to morph. We should acquire as many useful morphs as we can. What kind of animal morphs are going to be able to deal with Visor 3 when he turns into that big monster that ate the Andalite? I asked. There was nothing in this zoo or any other that was going to kick that big monster's butt. Marco winked. Fleas? No one can kill fleas. We'll itch him to death. I had to smile. So now you're suddenly Mr. Hopeful? No, I'm just so scared I'm getting weird, he said. I haven't done this morphing stuff. You guys all have. I'm not even a full-fledged Animorph yet. I'm still normal. I still feel normal, Cassie said. She looked troubled. Cassie, you can turn into a horse, Marco said. Very few normal kids can do that. It's different for Jake turning into a lizard. He's already a reptile. I took a good-natured swing at Marco, but he dodged it. It was cool having Marco with us, even if he was giddy. It took about half an hour to reach the main gate of the gardens. I climbed down off the bus feeling nervous, not at all like I usually felt going there. The gardens is just my favorite place to go to normally, but normally I'm not going there to get personal with dangerous animals. The main part of the gardens is the rides. They have all the usual stuff like roller coasters, which are my personal favorite, and Ferris wheels, also water slides. But they also have an animal part, which is like a zoo, only cooler. They do dolphin shows, and there's this whole section where you can get close to some of the safer animals. And this monkey habitat that had, and this monkey habitat, they have like a whole monkey city practically. Anyway, if I were an animal and I had to be in a zoo, I would want to be there. Cassie led us to the main building, which holds all kinds of exhibits. It has everything but the really big animals that need lots of space. Those animals are farther out, mostly in the big grassy that look habitats that look like parks. Parks with walls, moats, and fences around them. The main building is supposed to be like a rainforest, I guess. It's where they keep the animals that need to be warm all the time. There's a pathway that winds around with tall tropical trees overhead, bushes here and there in between exhibits. Some of the exhibits are tiny and some are really big, like the area they have for otters. It has a waterfall, water slide for the otters to play in. We were near the otter habitat when Cassie stopped. Okay, now everyone, stay together and try not to look suspicious, she said. I'm taking you inside. Inside where? Marco asked. Well, the way it works is there are walkways behind all these exhibits. That's how they feed the animals and give them meds or whatever. She pointed to an inconspicuous doorway. Anyway, we can go through here. It was an odd change from outside to inside. One minute we were in a fake rainforest, the next minute we were in what looked like a hallway at a school. Only the smell was worse, kind of damp, moldy, and musty. More like the boys' locker room. Okay, look, if any staff people stop us, the story is we're here to see my mom, Cassie said. Of course, it's so late in the afternoon she won't be here, I hope. Because if she finds out I've been out here dragging four of my friends around the back, well, can't be saving the world from alien invaders if I'm grounded. Hopefully there won't be many staff people here at all. We shuffled along the hallway, feeling like we definitely did not belong, which we didn't. On either side of the main hall, there were side paths that led to different exhibits. Unfortunately, the doorways to the exhibits just had numbers on them. I knew we'd have to rely on Cassie's knowledge to find our way around, behind some of those doors, were animals you didn't want to walk in on. How do you guys feel about gorillas? Cassie said. She had stopped by one of the numbered doors. This one is Big Jim's cage. He just came over from another zoo, so he's in his own private environment for now. He's very gentle. So slowly it dawned on me. What was Cassie saying? Oh, you mean does one of us want to acquire its DNA? That is why we're here, Jake, Rachel pointed out. She batted her eyes at Marco. How about you, Marco? Haven't you always wanted to be a big, hairy guy? Marco didn't look like he was crazy about the idea, but I knew how to handle Marco. Maybe Marco should try something easier for his first morph, I said. You know, like a cuddly little koala or something. That did it. Koala? Marco said, giving me a dirty look. Open the door, Cassie. He hesitated. You said gentle, right? Gorillas are extremely gentle, Cassie said. Then in a quieter voice she added, unless you make them mad. Cassie opened her backpack. She took out an apple and handed it to Marco. Here, you just open the door. The way it's set up, none of the visitors will be able to see you, unless you walk clear out and into the cage. Besides, there's an extra security gate, so he can't just jump out and you can't just walk in. So we just open the door and hope Big Jim feels like eating. Behind the door was a second door of steel bars with a little cutaway section for handlers to shove the food through. The entire door opening was concealed behind a fake rock ledge, so it wasn't visible to the people looking in the cage. But Big Jim noticed us right away. He climbed heavily down from his perch on the rock ledge, took a good look at us through the bars. Big Jim was definitely big. He had fingers the size of my wrist. But Jim didn't seem to mind us being there. Mostly he seemed interested in Marco's apple. He looked at Marco over, snorted like he wasn't impressed, and then he held out his hand. Hand him the apple, Cassie directed. He wants the apple. I love your work in King Kong versus Godzilla, Marco told the ape. He stuck his hand through the bars, held out the apple. With surprising daintiness, the gorilla lifted the apple and began inspecting it closely. Hold his hand, I said. Yeah, right, Marco laughed. When you acquire the DNA, the animal goes into a kind of trance, I said. Go ahead, grab his hand, and concentrate. Marco tentatively touched the gorilla's wrist. Nice monkey. The gorilla ignored him. Big Jim was much more interested in the apple than in any of us. Concentrate, Rachel urged. Marco closed his eyes. The ape closed his eyes. This is so cool, Tobias commented. You realize that gorilla could pull Marco apart like he was a paper doll? Look at those arms. Marco opened one eye. Tobias, being terrified gets in the way of concentrating. So how about if you shut up about his arms? Suddenly, I heard a whirring sound. I looked down the hall, then back. It was one of those electric carts, like a golf cart. It was coming towards us. Just act natural, Cassie hissed. Marco slipped out. She slammed the door on Big Jim. As long as it isn't a security guy, we're probably okay. The cart came up to us. Its driver was a man wearing a stained tan lab coat over his jeans. In the back of the cart were two large white plastic buckets full of something brown and horrible smelling. Hey, you're Cassie, right? The doc's kid. How's it going? Fine, Cassie said. She waved casually, and the man drove right on past. That was easy, Rachel said. He didn't even seem to care that we're back here. Well, where to next? Cassie wondered. We were at a four-way corner. There was blank white painted hallways in all directions. An electric golf cart was parked there too. What are we near? I asked. Cassie thought for a moment. Okay, the walkway leads to the outer exhibit. That one leads to the offices and storage facilities. These two go around the main building exhibits we're close to. Let me see. Bats, snakes that way. The jaguar and dolphin tank that way. Rachel started down the hallway to our right. Dolphins, I love dolphins. Wait, Cassie said, trotting after her. What are we going to do with dolphin morphs? I think we should go out to the big exhibit, Marco said. Let's get serious about this. We need firepower. Come on. Let's stick together, I asked, as Marco started down the hall. I reached out and grabbed him before he got too far away. And that's when the voice yelled, Hey, hey, you! What are you kids doing back here? I saw a guy in a brown uniform. Security, Cassie yelled. Oh man, they'll take us all into the office. They'll call my mom. I do not want to explain this to her. Split up, I said, trying to sound like a leader. Just like at the construction site. One guy can't get us all. This guy looks like a grandfather, Rachel said. Not like the Hork-Bajir that was after us. You kids, hold on. Oh man, Cassie said. With that, she took off down one hallway. Rachel and Tobias went after her. Marco was already 20 yards down the other, that one that led to the large exhibit. I ran to catch up. The guard reached the corner. I saw him glance toward Tobias and the girls. Then he looked at me and Marco. I guess Marco and I looked more suspicious because he chose us. Stop! You kids better stop! Let's grab the golf cart, Marco said. Still a golf cart? If we don't take it, the guard will. Good point. We jumped in the car. Marco slid behind the wheel. He turned the key on. He looked at me, just like driving bumper cars, right? Only you try not to hit anything. He put his foot down on the pedal. The electric monitor made a whirring sound, and we took off, straight toward the wall. Bam! Hey, try steering, I yelled. We backed up and took off again. We picked up speed enough to pull away from the guard. But when I looked back, he was still jogging after us. He's going to have a heart attack, I said. Which way? What? Which way? I turned around to face forward. We had reached a T-corner. Right, I yelled. Naturally, Marco turned left. I nearly fell out. Almost immediately, we reached another corner. This time, Marco did choose right, and I did fall out of the cart. I hit the linoleum and rolled. Then I was up and racing to catch the cart. What are you doing? Marco demanded when he saw me. Quit playing around. I just gave him a dirty look and climbed back in. I think we lost the guard, Marco said. I'm fine, thanks for asking, I said. Just a few bruises, maybe a cracked skull. Nothing serious. Where do you think we are? I think we're in the longest tunnel I have ever seen, I said. It's more and more like a tunnel now. The floor was still linoleum and the walls were still whitewashed, but the lights were getting more spread out, so you definitely had a feeling you were underground. I wonder if they caught the others, Marco said. Now do you see why it's crazy to think we could beat the Yerks? I mean, come on, we could barely beat zoo security. We haven't beat anyone yet, I said grimly. Look, way up ahead there were two guys in brown uniforms. Maybe they don't know who we are, Marco suggests. They might think we're regular employees. Maybe. But not if they get a good look at us, I pointed. There's a turnoff, take it. We turned at the same time the guard started yelling. The side corner grew narrow, too narrow for the golf cart. Ditch it. I jumped out. Marco jumped after me. We could hear the guards' footsteps as they ran down the main tunnel. These guys were in better shape than the old man. These guys could run. The corridor ended abruptly. There were two doors, one a little to the left and one a little farther to the right. They were labeled P201 and P203. No help at all. Pick a door, Marco said. I took a deep breath. Door number 1 I opened, P201. A blast of fresh air hit me. Sunlight blinded me. I blinked, trying to get my eye to adjust. The rhinoceros blinked too. Ah, I yelled. Ah, Marco yelled. We jumped back and slammed the door. Wrong door, Marco said. Definitely wrong door. Hey, you kids, stop right there. The guards were just at the end of the corridor. Gotta try door number 2, I said. Do it. We opened the door and ran through. There were trees all around us, trees and grass. We were in the shade. Sunlight filtered down through the leaves. Just ahead, the bushes gave way to open grass. Where are we? Marco asked. Like I know. We worked our way through the bushes, keeping a careful eye out in all directions. We didn't see any animals, just some birds up in the trees. Hey, there are people, Marco said. He dropped down behind a bush and pointed. There were people lined up behind a railing. They were high up, or else we were low down. I parted the bushes to get a better look. The people were leaning against a railing at the top of a high concrete wall. They couldn't see us because of the bushes, but they were definitely all staring at something. We're definitely in one of the habitats, I said. Those are people looking at whatever is in here with us. I'm just hoping it isn't the rhino. That thing was way too big. How do we get out of here? I don't know. Let's just get away from the door. Those guards will be coming after us any second. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, why haven't these guards come after us yet? Marco and I crawled through the bushes and around the base of the big tree. We reached around the corner of the wall, hidden from all the people above. That is an awfully high wall, Marco observed. That's got to be 30 feet high. This is not good. That wall is high for a reason. There's something in here they don't want to escape. I scanned the wall. There was a steel ladder set in the concrete about 50 yards away. I guess that's the only way out. Let me ask you something, Marco said. Why haven't the guards come after us? I mean, if this was like a deer antelope exhibit, they'd come right in, wouldn't they? We have to think, not panic, I said. I'm trying not to think about why the guards didn't come in here. I moved back into the shadow of the bushes. Besides, maybe there's nothing in here at all. I squatted down on my haunches. My butt touched something warm. I had a terrible feeling right at that moment. I looked up and saw Marco. Normally, Marco has kind of a dark tan face, but his face was white and his eyes were very large. Marco, I said, very slowly and very quietly, is there something behind me? He nodded. What is it, Marco? Jake, it's a tiger.